So yeah, if I can get a quick thumbs up from those of you on video, you can see my screen. It's got our webinar norms up there. Awesome, great. Thank you, Gerald. So thanks for joining us here today. Hopefully you've had a chance to check out the new story templates that we rolled out this July. And we are going to have another webinar about those and just what they look like and kind of how they function on Friday. Today, though, one of the great things about these new story templates is they are now customizable much more than they were previously. So to customize your template defaults, that is done. First of all, you have to be an administrator level user to do this. So if you want any of your students to be able to customize these, you need to make them an administrator on the site. And then where you go is under the SNO dashboard drop down here when you're logged in. The last option is design options. Clicking that will take you to the SNO design options page. There are a lot of different areas of SNO design options. So over on that menu, you'll want to select story page templates. And then from there, you can open the Story Template Editor. And this is the tool that we're going to be, thank you. Okay, so yes, I'm speaking. Yeah, Gerald, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I am. So yeah, let me just see if I can help you here. Oh, you got, okay. Yeah, so really quickly. All right, so hopefully we'll get that figured out here. All right. So once you're in the Story Template Editor, then you can select which of the templates that you want to edit. And again, you can edit all of these. So everybody, regardless of what your site is, should have full width immersive photo, immersive half photo, and single sidebar available. Dual sidebars, you'll see if your site is at least 1,200 pixels wide, and those were the 5 templates that we rolled out this summer. You also now have the ability to create 3 custom templates on your end. I'll talk a little more about that later on here in the webinar. But the way the Story Template Editor works is you select which template you would like to edit. And so what we're doing here is we're editing the default settings of these templates. So on the right here, you get a preview of what the story is going to look like, just some placeholder content here. And then you can drop into the different sections over here. And each section that you drop into just by clicking on this triangle on the right will give you different things that you can customize. I'm actually going to switch here to single sidebar because that'll give us a few more things that I like to showcase. So first of all, again, if I wanted to customize my category blocks here, I can come in. So you can do things like adjust the font size on these different elements. You're no longer locked into a single font type either. So any font that you're using on the site that you've set up in your SNO design options in the fonts tab is going to be available for you to select and use anywhere or in some of these different sections of your story page. So if I wanted to use Garamond font here on my category blocks, I can select that. Can also then just try to clarify some terminology. The corner radius, this is the rounding of those buttons. So if you wanted a more circular button, just really kick up the corner radius. And as you can see there, that really rounds those edges. If I want more of a square look, then I would drop that down. So got some options there. And then colors you can swap out there. The padding, that's just the spacing between things or the extra color around those buttons there. And then you can also increase the space between the blocks. So again, I'm not going to go through every setting on every one of these, but just want you to know, I think all in all, there are 250 plus options you have to play with here. So you can get these story pages looking exactly the way you want them. So let's say though that, all right, I've got those category blocks looking the way that I want, but I'd rather have the headline up top here. That's where this up down icon on the left side of the sections comes in handy. I can grab that here, and then I can change the order and rearrange where those sections appear. There are some limitations to that. For example, if I tried to move my headline below the actual body of the story, it's not going to let me do that. And so it changes to a red to let me know that can't happen. But really, you've got a lot of control over where these different sections appear. And then you've got the different settings that you can customize in here as well. With the headline, one thing I like to point out that's new is you can set a unique font size for when people view your story on mobile devices versus on the desktop. So obviously, if you've got that font really big for the desktop, maybe we got that at 52, a nice big headline there, and we're going to keep them short. We probably don't want a 52 pixel font if we're looking at it on a phone. So you can decrease that size there. It doesn't show up on the preview, but that is going to be the font size that's used when people view your site on the mobile device. You now can also control the line height or kind of the spacing between the different lines there. That's a new setting that we've given you control over. So again, some more different things there. With the deck here, what I like to point out is you can now create a border for your deck. I just give it a nice color that will stand out there. You can do a top, bottom, left, or bottom border, and you can add a unique background color. So if you really wanted to make your deck stand out, if you do a lot with decks there or subheadlines, you now have the option to do that. Byline. I think the coolest thing we've done with the byline is if we scroll down here, you have the option now to show a byline photo. So this is going to pull in your staff reporter's staff profile image. So as long as Isabella here has a staff profile and that staff profile has an image, then if I select show her byline photo, every time she's got a byline on the single sidebar template, that image is going to show up right there. So you've got some, if you, again, square, rounded, or circular photo there. And then you can also do color or black and white on the photo. The date has its own line here. And again, tons of custom settings. But the one I really like is the date display option here. It's the first one in the date section. I can show the date, hide the date, or I can append the date to the byline row. And then that just pulls it right up into that same line as the byline. It's then using all the settings that you've customized there in the byline. You can do the same thing here with story views. I personally like to hide story views, but you can either show them as their own row there, customize what that looks like, or you can also append that to the byline row. So if you like showing all three, that can be placed in the same row for kind of a nice clean look there. The photo area here, you can select your default photo location above or beside the story, and those are holdovers from what was previously available. Above is a little bit larger, beside is a little smaller, it'll wrap the text around it. You can select vertical or horizontal orientation. So if you've got a template that you're going to use for only vertical images, maybe a profile section or something, and we're going to use only full width for our profiles, you can set vertical. Just keeping in mind, typically when people are viewing your site on desktops, horizontal, tends to work better. That's why by default, everything we have is designed for horizontal. But if you've got some place where you're going to use a lot of vertical images, you can now set your story template up to accommodate those. You can adjust the photo height for how tall that's going to be. So as you can see here on my screen, 800 pixels takes up almost the entire screen there. So if I wanted that a little shorter to make sure people can see the text, I can adjust that there. either show the full photo, and if you do that, it's going to squeeze the photo into the height that you've selected, and you can select a color to show on the rest of that area, or you can fill the photo area, and that's going to kind of stretch the photo, and some areas on the far sides, top, bottom, left, or right, might get cropped out a little bit. Also, and the photo area is where you've got control over over the captions. So just had a question, do we need to set these on each article? Not with the story template editor. What we're doing right now is setting this for the default. So once I apply this and save it, it's going to, these settings will apply every time I use the single sidebar template. So yeah, that's everything there with the photo area. Video area, by default, this is hidden on the preview because so many of our sites don't have videos with every story. If you use a lot of videos, you can turn that on in the preview and see what that looks like there. Otherwise, pretty straightforward settings within that you can customize. The body text, pretty straightforward, but the thing that I think is kind of cool that we've added here is you can now turn a drop cap on for the story. So if you'd like to begin with a drop cap, once you turn that on, you've got some additional settings underneath here that you can customize, how you can customize what that drop cap looks like. There's a standard or an inverted style there. Social media icons that appear currently floating on the right side. Got a little bit of control over those. And this is definitely a personal preference and me getting subjective here on my webinar that I'm getting to present today. But I really like having them within the story template here, kind of tied on the bottom. Thing is there, if I do that, they're only going to be visible when I get to that location in the story. If you want to see them showing all the times, then you probably do want to select one of the floating options there. Comments link, that's pretty straightforward. It's just this leave a comment button, but if you wanted to adjust the font or colors, you can do that there. Tag blocks, really similar to the category blocks there, so not a lot in terms of the settings that we haven't gone over yet. The donations prompt, your option there is to show or hide it. So if you wanted to select a specific template, maybe where you don't want to see that donations prompt, if you're using SNO Donate, you can choose to hide that. Otherwise, again, it's just going to be show or hide. There are your options. Now, I'm going to jump down and come back to related content, but the contributor box here can show or hide, and then you can also show or hide the photo. And again, kind of like the byline, this photo is getting pulled from this reporter, this staff member's staff profile. So in order to have a photo show up down here, each person has to have a staff profile, and that staff profile has to have a photo with it. That's contributor, and contributor is going to be anybody who's got a byline somewhere on this piece. So whether that's on a photo, a video, or the written byline, they'll show up in your contributors box down here. The related content, we did a lot, our developer did a lot of work on this, and I think it looks really, really nice here. So if you do within the story template, you can select related content based on stories in the same category, stories that use the same tag. So if you use a lot of tags, that might be helpful for you, or stories by the same writer. So those are your options there. And then you can adjust the number of columns and rows that are visible. And that's within the story template there. You've got some control. You'll notice here we've got news and breaking news. So if you categorize a story in more than one category, it will show breaking news, or it will show related content from both of those categories. And so just be aware of that. All right, so that's within the story template. Another way that you can choose to display related content is with what we call the bottom drawer, and that's this little area here that shows up underneath, and people click on it and it pops up and they can see additional stories in those categories. You can also do it here as a carousel at the bottom. If you are using a template that has a sidebar, you can choose to replace the sidebar with the related content or add the related content to the end of your sidebar widgets that you've customized. So in this case, my sidebar area has the trending stories and an advertisement in it. So if I chose to append the related content to that sidebar, it's going to appear underneath that advertisement on the right side of the page. You also do have the option to hide related content. So a lot to do there in related content. Then at the very bottom here, we've got kind of some global design options. So things like how wide do you want your content to be here? You can adjust that. You could set a unique background color there. If you want, I probably would recommend white, but that's just, again, that's me. You can adjust the location of your sidebar, so right or left there. You can also change the width of your sidebar. So if you wanted a smaller sidebar with more focus there on the content, you can do that, or a wider sidebar. You can set which widget area the sidebar content is getting pulled from. If you've in the past used a sidebar story template and you liked that content, just keep that set for as your non-home sidebar here. You do now have the ability to create up to 9 custom sidebars. We've got another webinar where we're going to talk directly about that later on this week. So I won't spend too much time on that here, but this is just where you can set which sidebar is going to be displayed by default. Again, if you've been using sidebars in the past, I would probably just keep it set as the non-home sidebar, as that has been our traditional primary sidebar there. If you participate in our Best of Snow program, you can set where that Best of Snow badge will display if your story earns Best of Snow. And then in addition to custom sidebars, you can also create custom headers and footers. Again, we'll have separate webinars on those if that's something that interests you, but for right now, we'll just keep it set to the standard one. So let's say I've made my changes here to the sidebar template and I like it. I'm going to go ahead and save all design options. So now any story that has used the single sidebar template and it's using the default settings, that's automatically going to adjust that story to use these new settings that I've applied. Let's see a couple other things here in the Story Template Editor. Dual sidebars, as I mentioned, is a new template that's available to everybody. One thing that we would recommend, if you use the dual sidebars, we would recommend bumping both of the sidebars back to a 200 pixel width, because as you can see here, even on the preview, the dual sidebars really kind of squeezes that content. And even if I moved the sidebar, say I moved them both to the right side here, it's a pretty narrow area for my content. So again, that's just our recommendation if you use the dual sidebars template there. And then with the immersive half photo here with the, nice solid background where the deck and the headline are displayed, I can switch the side that photo appears on. I can change the background color. It knows I'm doing a webinar here, so it's not cooperating, but that's if you wanted to change the solid background color here, you can adjust that within the template sections. So again, each one of these is going to have a few unique things about it by virtue of the templates being a little different. But overall, the tools here in the template section will function similarly to how I showed with the single sidebar. So again, if I make changes to this, it's being changed so that then anytime I add a story and select that template as the default, it's going to pull in the settings that I've set in the Story Template Editor. As I mentioned before, you do have the option to activate up to 3 custom templates. So I made one here for sponsored content. Our thought process behind having custom templates is that you make those for content that's kind of unique and not necessarily, you wouldn't make a sports template, but rather for stuff like sponsored content, or maybe you have lit magazine stories, something that's not really in line with the rest of your news website. You could set that as a custom template to really make it unique and stand out. So for example, what I did there is I activated template area 1, named it sponsored content, and I can set how many sidebars I want to be on there. Typically, sponsored content is a money-making venture, so I did double sidebars, and I made it really hideous here, but as you can see, I tried to make it look, really different. And so somebody reads this, it's really going to stand out and look like nothing else on my site, which is kind of what you'd be going for with sponsored content. You don't want people to get confused and think that it's work that's been done by your staff. But obviously, if you did this with a lit mag or something, maybe it's got more of an artsy feel to it, but you still have all of the tools over here. And so you are free to set this up and design it in whatever way you would like for that custom template. And then once you do that and save it, it is available to use as one of your story templates when you add a story. One last thing I want to touch on with the Story Template Editor is, let's say I get my single sidebar page looking awesome. I'm really happy with it. By default, we are not going to touch any of your stories that were published using the old or legacy templates. Those are going to look exactly the way they did when you published them. However, if you decide, well, I'd like my old sidebar stories to look like the new ones just for consistency across the site, you can easily convert those stories by coming here. And previously, the sidebar template was called the non-home sidebar template. I can convert those stories, and I can tell it which template to convert them to. If I save that, it's going to convert all the stories that previously used the non-home sidebar to now the single sidebar look. So this does it in mass. You don't need to go through and convert things one by one. And then if you decide you don't like it, or for whatever reason, there was an old story that needs that previous template, it's easy to roll back if you do a batch conversion here just by deselecting that and again, saving it. On the flip side, if I were to go to an old story that was published using one of the old templates, I will see this message down here that it was created using a legacy story template. I can choose then to convert it to a Flex Pro template, but if I convert an individual story, there's no way to undo that. So just be aware of that. If you want to change any of your old stories to the new templates, you can do it at the individual story level, but that is a permanent change, or you can do it en masse in the story page templates section of SNO design options by coming down here in the left column to the convert legacy stories to the new templates. So that's a lot we've thrown at you here in a very short amount of time. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put those on the chat, and I will definitely talk about those. But just letting you know, as I kind of alluded to, we'll have a separate webinar on how you can create custom sidebars or custom headers and footers and how you can then place those in your story. So if you would like to know more about those, definitely encourage you to sign up for those webinars. We also have support articles on how to do that as well. If you wanted to review any of this, again, feel free to submit a support ticket. We can send you the recording of this webinar. There's also a support article about the Story Template Editor that has a about 10-minute video that goes over all of this if you want it a little more condensed. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. But otherwise, thanks for joining me here this afternoon to talk about the Story Template Editor. Hope you're excited about it. We're excited to see some of the designs that you all come up with the Story Template Editor, and look forward to seeing those this year. So I go ahead and stop the recording.